Test, test. Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to another week in the markets. Hope you guys had a fantastic weekend and we're ready to see what's cooking. It's August 18th and Monday fun day. So let's break down the news expected this week first, and then we'll do a little more of a deep dive into these equities to prepare you for the week ahead. Now, there isn't really too many massive earnings this week. Everyone's waiting for NVIDIA next week. I believe it's going to be August 27th, if I'm not mistaken. That's the final Mag 7 to report, and it's rotating around now. Big tech has been a little weaker in relation to the S&P, right? There's been a little more sell pressure on big tech after that CPI rally from last week. Last week we had two main events that kind of trickled into other aspects of the market. Number one, we had CPI that came out Tuesday pre-market, which opened up a movement into all-time highs 2 sessions after the CPI, so the RTH and then the following ETH moved both Nasdaq and the S&P into ATH all-time highs, while PPI that came out Thursday pre-market opened up a little more of that sell pressure that trickled into Friday and rolled over into the end of the week. So what do we have this week, right? What do we have to look forward to? There's still some kind of bearish pressure in both these equities. We'll cover that in just a few seconds, but first and foremost, let's take a look at some of this news. Mainly looking at things out of the US. This is Forex Factory. You can go and just type that into Google, right? Forexfactory.com. Look at their calendar and get yourselves prepared for the news events that come out. What I like to do is I'll filter it, generally looking at orange and red folders, right? Not that I necessarily trade this news, but it's very good to be aware of when these events are set to come out so you can avoid getting killed. So not really anything today in terms of the high or medium impact folders on Monday, August 18th. The 19th, Tuesday, we have some stuff out of Canada, so not super interested in that, right? Some of the CPI data. And then Wednesday, August 20th, right, we have the FOMC meeting minutes from the prior meeting. There's not going to be a FOMC rate decision this month because we have the Jackson Hole Symposium, an economic event forum that is yearly in August, where Jerome Powell is expected to speak on Friday. So that's going to be one of the main events. So Wednesday and Friday, we have some pretty key figures in from the Fed that are going to discuss things, right? We have Fed's Christopher Waller, who is at the forefront of replacing Powell come Powell's term end in May 2026. And then Thursday, the Jackson Hole, I believe, starts. So Jackson Hole is from Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But the main event is Fed Chair Powell speaking at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday for the Jackson Hole Day 2. On Thursday, out of the news, we've got some stuff after the market opens. Flash marketing, manufacturing PMI, flash services PMI. Pre-market, we got some unemployment claims out of the U.S., and then we roll over into the Jackson Hole. So expect some Fed speakers as well throughout the week. Now, this week, going into Wednesday, probably a little more quiet, right? A little more volatility and activity expected for the latter half of the week, realistically. So we could see some sleepiness. So far, the daily volume, we have 20 minutes until the market opens, and the daily volume on the S&P 500 is 99,000 contracts, which is pretty weak. Generally speaking, when we're looking at the S&P, around 150, 200,000 contracts trade on the overnight session going into the morning session is something that we'd like to see with a little more oomph to give us some movement. So this is the S&P 500's volume profile, something that we want to take a look at, and this is where we're going to get an understanding of what's going on. Our general breakdown and bias for the day. So we have this major distribution that's setting up into the low 6460s, which is the bottom, and then the top is a 64 high 90s, 97, 96 area, which is a balance that the S&P is currently trying to hold. There was a little head fake underneath on the overnight, which represents some kind of bullish momentum. Realistically, the main area that I'm watching to see that threshold kind of open up for the bull side is if we can get aggressive acceptance above 6470 on the S&P, right? That's going to be a trigger to see if we can actually push some bullish momentum to start the week. But right now, lower lows, lower highs, we're holding this mid 50 so far, but there is the CPI session volume profile over here that could get cleaned up a little more, right? It's very low volume. So the way that I'm looking at this is the bulls, right, on the S&P, they've been kind of pushed aside, not as much as on the NASDAQ. Friday, we left a low volume tail into the high of the session. And right now, what we're doing is we're holding the start of it as resistance on the overnight into that mid-80. The way that I see things is the sellers are going to want to attack from the 70s, low 70s on S&P, and potentially the low 80s on the S&P to see if they can break under that low 60. The targets to the downside are going to be into the mid-50s, low 50s, so 64, 52, let's say, and then the major distribution top, which starts out around that mid-30. This mid-30 is going to be a general downside target to start things off, to find some kind of buy pressure. So I am leaning a bit more to the bear side, unfortunately, today with the most recent weakness, but that's really cemented once prices actually move outside of balances, so to the downside of this balance. Keep that in mind. So bullish pressure would be better seen above this low 70 to see if they can actually orchestrate some kind of rally. Now you take a look at the NASDAQ here to wrap things up for the weekly start. NASDAQ a lot weaker. You can see incremental lower lows, lower highs throughout last week and on the overnight as well. We have a major developing distribution balance which sets up the bottom is somewhere around 870, 880. The top band is 960 area. So we've left that, right? We left that on Friday. Once we left it, that area is being used as resistance, right? Based on auction theory, that's realistically what should take place. And right now, we've split the profile at a developing little spot at 23,820. This is going to be the first area where the sellers want to get active. The lower band distribution starts from 23,760 all the way down to 23,610 area, where there's very limited volume to the downside from the CPI move. The bearish case right now is a cleaner acceptance under 760, under 740, where we can go and potentially tag those low 600s. I think the sellers are going to want to try to sell from 23,820 area to see if there's going to be some kind of continued movement to break the bottom of the balance. Realistically, the bullish case, the best bullish case for NASDAQ is if they can bid aggressively and close above 23,870, right? On the day, the bullish case is head fakes under 740 to rebid above 760, and especially above that 820. But right now, as things stand, honestly, I'd be very cautious with the bull side, right? I'm only more convinced if 820 goes bid aggressively, but right now, we're looking to sell some rallies under 760, under 820, to see if we can go and test those low 600s, which are pretty far away. It could be a decent little potential move. Now, volume's pretty weak on the overnight. We're going into some better or some higher volatility events that come out midweek and towards the end of the week, which is something that a lot of traders are going to be waiting for. So we could see a little more sideways chop as well as repositioning, right, which would open up some of that downside going into large events like that. So I'll leave you guys with that. I hope you guys enjoyed the weekly prep. We'll be back on Wednesday for Power Hour, morning sewerette, and I hope everyone has a fantastic start to the week. Take it slow. We'll be opening up our live trading room at TRADEPRO Academy, and I'll see you all in there. And get ready for the second video of the free futures course this weekend. I hope everyone enjoys, has a fantastic weekend. I'll